Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Secretary Alan Peter S. Cayetano.
For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Regardless po ng ating religion, mga kapatid natin Muslim, kapatid natin Kristiyano, and of the other religions, Jeremiah 29:11 talks about a father assuring his son that he has plans for him, that he has a vision for him. And that vision is to give him hope and a future. But all of us know that no matter how great an earthly or heavenly Father's plan is for us, we were given free will, and thus we have to make the right choices. In fact, the Bible also speaks of the role of the devil, which is to cheat, to steal, and to kill. Meaning, in whatever we do, we have a choice. So tonight, I'd like to start by thanking all of you for taking time out from your busy schedules for being with us today. I'd like to thank, of course, Patrick. He agreed to say that he admires me if I agree to say that I also admire him very much. And since he introduced me to the White House 2 years ago, how can I forget him? Hindi ko na babatiin yung mga taga-DFA isa-isa, ang ating mga special guest. But I'd like to later on ask, I cannot call him General and Secretary at the same time kasi hindi naman siya Secretary General. Former General, now Secretary and head of the Dangerous Drug Board, Dionisio Santiago, who was one of those who had an outstanding record in PIDEA several years back, but he's been called back to service. Thank you, sir, for being here. And maybe before we start the Q&A and the open forum, you can say a little bit about the campaign against drugs and if there are any questions later on. General Santiago is one of the people who the President consulted during the campaign and even before the campaign. But to go straight to the point, first of all, we're really here to listen. Because the choices we make as government officials also depends on the needs of our people. And we have to listen to you to find out what the needs are. Now, since we're a democratic country, we can't just do things, then ask you, how are we doing? Are we in the correct direction? And what else do you think we can do? And the strength and weakness of the Filipino is that there are 10 million out of the country. It's a strength because you have brought life to our economy, especially at times that we were at the verge of collapse. You have put in the necessary infrastructure, whether it's the education of your children, whether it's the housing or real estate industry, and you have made much, much sacrifice. It's a weakness because we're not all together, you know, but that weakness can also be made up. I only have one appeal for you here tonight. I've been studying a little bit more about the United States of America. I should know more because my mother is from Michigan, but she's more Filipino by heart, and she keeps saying, I'm too Filipino for the Americans. And then whispers to me, but I'm too American for the Filipinos. You know? So my mom taught me many things, including kindness and to love both the USA and the Philippines. My dad was a very staunch patriot, as you know, but one thing that they had in common is wanting unity and wanting strength. My dad showed a different kind of strength as the father of the family, and even when he got Hepa B and later on cancer of the stomach, he showed a different kind of strength here in the U.S. when he was trying to recover. And till the last day of his life, face the television, face his friends to share the gospel. No? My mom had a different kind of strength, moving to the Philippines alone. She invited my grandparents to her wedding of the day of the wedding because she feared her father might not like colored people, and since we're browner than people during that time, no. And she got to the Philippines by herself, and each and every Filipino that met her said, "Don't worry, in the Philippines it's all about family." But they didn't talk about political families. So when my mom was pregnant and she was in Mandaluyong in AB season, sa labas ng Mandaluyong, hindi sa loob, no? And she was about to give birth to me. My grandmother told my dad, "Go ahead and campaign." It was the Constitutional Convention. And he said, "Go ahead and campaign. I'll take care of your wife. I'm your mother. I'm her mother." And as soon as my dad walked out the door, my grandma said, "Oh, Sandy, I think you'll be okay for a while. I'll just leave." And when she was giving birth to me, she was all alone. No, and but she's a strong woman, and together they showed me that if we work together, we can be strong. Why do I mention this? Because in studying the United States of America and the different ethnic groups, I see that people with existential issues, for example, the Jewish people, no, yung mga Hudyo, there are Democrats, there are Republicans. There are those involved in politics. There are those who are not. There are those who are very religious. There are those who are semi-religious. There are some who are very, very involved in the nation's affairs, and there are some who are very involved in business. But when it comes to existential issues regarding Israel, they all come together. No? And this is not unique only to the Jewish people. So we are fond of teasing ourselves that if you lose an election, don't worry, you put up your own association. And when you have many associations, we put up a federation. And when you can't get along, let's put up another federation. And if later on you can put on a confederation until the number of organizations grow. And it's not a bad thing to have numerous Filipino organizations. But can we agree na kapag yung issue ay existential o yung issue ay mas masyadong importante sa atin, we bind together, we look away from our religion, from our provinces, from our politics, sinong presidente natin dito sa Amerika, sinong presidente natin doon sa Pilipinas, and we just come together as Filipinos. One example is DACA. You might have relatives that are registered under DACA. They said there's 5,000 Filipinos under that. Mali daw yung 10,000 kasi yung unang registered at re-registration, nadagdag bawas tayo doon. So, actually, it's 5,000 daw, no? But, I mean, any one of us here could have been a person in that. And imagine if 3.5 million Filipinos fill AMS or AMFILs, depending on how you want to describe it, write their congressman, write their senator, write their mayor, write their governor, post on the Facebook that we are one with all of these people in DACA. Congress, please pass this law. As Foreign Secretary, I'm not allowed to interfere with U.S. law, but I am allowed to cheer on and to encourage our people, especially the dual citizens or anyone with Filipino lineage, to get together and make our voices heard, not only in the Philippines, but also here in the United States of America. Let me give you another example that might not seem existential to many, but it is existential to many Filipinos. There's no problem talking about the drug war. There's absolutely every reason to talk about human rights. We're made in the image of God. No? Every person has a soul. So natural yung human rights, di ba? But if we discuss it in a matter that hurts Filipino business and discourages Western companies from the US and EU from going to the Philippines, hindi naman masasaktan yung Duterte administration. We will continue to grow at 6% or 5.8 or 6.5%, because there are other areas where the independent foreign policy is bringing in good news. But imagine if only one call center or one chip manufacturer does not expand in the Philippines and chooses to go elsewhere. How many Filipinos will lose their job or will not get a job in the Philippines and will be forced to look for jobs abroad? If not for the call centers, there'll probably be 1 or 2 more million overseas workers abroad. But because of the call centers, maybe much more, because it's not only the direct benefit of the BPOs, but it's also the real estate play because they look for offices. You have the businesses that support, di ba? If you've been to 7-Eleven lately, you'd see kompleto na sila, di ba? Pati rice, pati balut, pati penoy, everything, because the call center groups support all of this, transportation, the coming to our country of Uber, Grab. Of course, may competition sa taxi, but through all this technology, it's creating jobs and more in the middle class, no? So again, I'm not saying let's not be political. I'm not saying let's not be partisan. In fact, the more partisan we are, the more democratic we are, the more Filipino we are. So what I'm saying is, let's be Filipino in arguing over dinner, lunch, merienda. But yung balikatan at saka yung bayanihan spirit is also very Filipino, di ba? So just like any one of us here who grew up with either both parents or both lolo't lola, one is always very strict and one is always very kind. Because if both of them are kind, then we won't really be that disciplined. But if both of them are very tough, we'll run away from home. So most, if not all of us, who grew up, whether with our auntie and tito or nanay and tatay or lolo and lola, had a good cop, bad cop in our family, di ba? And of course, they did that in tandem. So I'm saying, let's disagree on many things, but let's act in tandem. That's the only message, actually, that I wanted to give you today, and then the rest we'd like to listen. If we can answer your questions, we will. But let me assure you, it was a very, very productive trip. I can't, it's not enough time to tell you all about it, but from now, meetings in the White House to meetings in the Senate and the Senate offices and think tanks, etc., everyone agrees that the relationship of the U.S. and Philippines is strong. Everyone agrees that the independent foreign policies of being friends to all and enemies to none is good. And everyone agrees na nagno-normalize at paakyat na yung relationship natin. We are always good hosts. We are always hospitable. So whether you're Democrats or Republicans, I think President Trump is coming to the November ASEAN Summit, and I hope we can be one as Filipinos in welcoming all these world leaders, including President Trump, despite the fact that you may agree or disagree with him. I'll end on this note, some of those who I've met started with, what do you think about the NFL and President Trump? I said, well, actually, Filipinos didn't really notice until, said, until what? Until you got the NBA stars involved. Once Stephen Curry and LeBron James get involved, the Filipinos are there, So, I was just trying to make it light. I know these are serious issues, but there are a few things that bind us together. Our love for country, sports, diba? There's zero crime when Manny Pacquiao fights, diba? But I hope we can add these existential issues that will bind us together and help us. Our kababayans in Florida and British Virgin Islands, although we evacuated most from there, if not all, and then, of course, Houston, need our help. And I'm encouraging not only the PhilAm community, you've done much, but imagine 3.5 million PhilAms If all of us give $1, you have $3.5 million dollars to help people. No? That's not counting the 100 million Filipinos back home. If 100 million Filipinos give 10 pesos for a relief effort, then you have 1 billion pesos. No? Easier said than done, but we have to start somewhere, and many of you have started, and many of you have volunteered and sent help to your relatives and friends. So may I just encourage you to continue that, and may I encourage you to expand, and find ways to work with everyone in the spirit of bayanihan at sa pagmamahal ng kapwa. So again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to have more time for the open forum.